In a quiet Phoenix suburb on Christmas Eve 2024, a veteran police officer answered a familiar domestic call and stepped back into the freezing night only to notice a soft blue glow coming from a trash can on the curb. Inside lay a discarded statue of the Virgin Mary, its mantle shining with an inner light that no street lamp could explain. He took it home on an impulse he couldn't name, a man who believed only in evidence and facts. What began that night with a simple act of rescue would save his sister's life, restore a broken family, and awaken faith in a heart that had long ago closed its doors to mystery. Before we continue, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Let's see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary have reached. And if you haven't yet joined our family, subscribe now, because here, each day, we witness the tender love and mighty power of the Mother of God. Tom Bennett had served the Phoenix Police Department for 19 years, long enough to earn the kind of respect that didn't need volume or threats. Tall and broad-shouldered, with gray beginning to silver his temples, he carried authority in quiet presence. Criminals calmed when he spoke. Victims trusted him instinctively. He worked nights because the city felt more honest then, fewer distractions, just the orange glow of streetlights on empty pavement, and the people who truly needed help. Raised Catholic, he had drifted away young. He respected faith in others, attended funerals and weddings when duty or family called. But for himself, it had always felt like beautiful stories meant for those who needed them more. "I believe what I can see," he told friends over coffee. Christmas Eve 2024 was unusually cold for Phoenix, the kind of chill that slipped under collars and made breath visible. Tom was on solo patrol through a tidy residential neighborhood. Porches with rocking chairs, yards strung with blinking lights, wreaths on doors that looked freshly hung. At 10:37 p.m., dispatch crackled through the quiet. Domestic disturbance, shouting, and breaking glass reported at the Morrison residence. Tom knew the address too well. Third call in 6 months. Same pattern. Husband drinks, wife explodes, neighbors dial 911. He pulled up to the familiar bungalow. Christmas lights blinking red against the stucco walls. Shouting spilled through the windows, her voice high and raw, his low and slurred. Tom stepped out into the biting air, boots crunching on frost-tipped grass. He knocked firmly, 3 measured raps that carried authority without aggression. The yelling stopped as if cut by a switch. Footsteps, then the door cracked open. Misses. Morrison stood there, blonde hair disheveled, clutching a dish towel like a lifeline. "Officer Bennett," she said wearily. No surprise, only exhaustion. "I'm sorry they called again. May I come in?" She stepped aside. Inside smelled of roasted turkey and spilled beer. Mr. Morrison sat slumped on the couch, head in hands, 3 empty bottles on the coffee table. Tom pulled a chair close, sat eye level. "Talk to me." The story poured out. Lost job in September, bills piling, shame turning to drink, promises broken again on the one night the world pretended families were perfect. Tom listened the way he always did. No judgment, just presence, until the storm passed. 40 minutes later, the house was quiet. Mr. Morrison promised to sleep it off. Mrs. Morrison promised to call a counselor. Tom knew he'd probably return, but tonight was salvaged. He stepped back into the cold, breath fogging. That was when he saw the Glow Point 3 trash cans line the curb, waiting for post-holiday pickup. From the middle one came a soft blue light, steady, gentle, unmistakable in the dark. Tom paused, frowned. Kids playing with glow sticks? A forgotten Christmas decoration? He approached, lifted the lid. Inside, half buried under crumpled wrapping paper and broken ornaments, lay a statue of the Virgin Mary. About 20 inches tall, porcelain, painted with exquisite care. Her face was serene, eyes downcast in gentle compassion, hands extended in blessing. The mantle was a deep, luminous blue that seemed to capture the streetlight and give it back softer, warmer, almost alive. Tom stood frozen. He had seen hundreds of such statues in his childhood home, in churches, at his grandmother's bedside. But never one glowing like this, never one discarded like garbage on Christmas Eve that he reached in and lifted it. Cold from the night air, heavier than expected. The glow faded slightly in his hands, but the blue mantle still held an inner light, as if lit from within. He turned it over, no batteries, no wiring, just porcelain and paint. Something tugged at him, an impulse he couldn't name. He should leave it. Evidence of neglect, perhaps, or theft. Instead, he carried it to the patrol car and set it gently on the passenger seat. All the way home, he glanced at it, half expecting the glow to vanish, half hoping it wouldn't. Tom drove home through the deserted streets of Phoenix, the statue silent on the passenger seat beside him. The blue mantle no longer glowed as intensely as it had in the trash can, but every time he passed beneath a street lamp, the porcelain seemed to drink in the light and give it back softer, almost warmer. He told himself he would drop it at the station's Lost and Found tomorrow, or perhaps leave it at St. Mary's Parish on his way to work. Yet when he pulled into his apartment complex, he carried it inside without a second thought, setting it on the kitchen counter beneath the harsh fluorescent bulb. Up close, it was even more beautiful. The gentle tilt of the Virgin Mary's head, the finely painted folds of her mantle, the outstretched hands that seemed to offer something he couldn't name. Tom turned it over. No batteries, no wiring, just cold porcelain and old paint. He wrapped it in a clean towel and placed it on a shelf in the hall closet, out of sight, out of mind. Or so he thought. Christmas morning dawned gray and colder than Phoenix had any right to be. Tom woke early, showered, and drove to his mother Margaret's house in the suburbs, the same ranch-style home where he, James, and Lisa had grown up chasing each other through the sprinklers. The smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls greeted him at the door. Margaret hugged him tightly, longer than usual, as if trying to hold back the inevitable. Inside, James was already there with his wife and 2 young children, the tree lights blinking, presents piled high beneath branches heavy with ornaments collected over decades. But the joy felt fragile this year, like glass ornament too close to the edge. Lisa sat curled in the recliner by the fireplace, blanket over her legs, face pale but smiling bravely. His younger sister, once the family's bright spark, the one who organized game nights, who could make anyone laugh even on their worst day, now diminished by the cruel progress of ALS. Diagnosed 18 months earlier, the disease had stolen her strength with relentless patience. She could still speak clearly, still smile, but her hands trembled too much to unwrap gifts unaided, and her legs had forgotten how to carry her more than a few shuffling steps. The doctors had been kind but unflinching. No cure, only slowing, only time. Tom hugged her carefully, feeling the fragility of bones beneath the blanket. "You made it," she whispered, voice soft but warm. Wouldn't miss it for anything. But he saw the pain behind her eyes. Not just physical, but the deeper sorrow of watching life narrow day by day while everyone around her pretended it was still wide open. Breakfast was quieter than in years past. The children's excitement carried the room, but the adults moved carefully around the truth reclining by the fire. After presents, when the kids ran outside to test new bikes and scooters, the grown-ups gathered closer. Lisa spoke first, voice steady despite the effort it cost. "I'm tired of pretending," she said. "I know what the doctors said. I know what's coming. I just wanted one more Christmas where we're all together, where it feels normal." Margaret's eyes filled instantly. James reached for her hand across the coffee table. Tom felt the old anger rise. Not at Lisa, never at Lisa, but at the unfairness of it all, at a universe that would take the best of them while letting the worst walk free. He stood abruptly. "I'll get more coffee." In the kitchen, he leaned against the counter, breathing hard, fists clenched. That was when he remembered the statue still wrapped in his trunk. On impulse, he went outside, retrieved it, and brought it back in. The family turned as he unwrapped the towel on the coffee table. Lisa's eyes widened first. "It's beautiful," she whispered, reaching out with trembling fingers. "Where did you find it?" "Trash can on a call last night," Tom said, trying to sound matter-of-fact. "Someone threw it out. Thought maybe you'd like it." Lisa took it carefully into her lap. The moment her hands touched the blue mantle, her face softened, tension easing from her brow. "It's warm," she murmured, almost to herself, "like it's been sitting in sunlight." Margaret crossed herself instinctively. James looked at Tom, eyebrows raised. Tom only shrugged, but inside he felt the same strange tug he had felt on the sidewalk, the inexplicable sense that this discarded thing was meant to be found. Lisa kept the statue close the rest of the day, tracing the folds of the mantle with fingers that seemed a fraction steadier, smiling in a way Tom hadn't seen in months. When evening came and the family began to disperse, she asked Tom to carry it to the guest room where she was staying. He set it on the nightstand beside her bed, facing her. That night, for the first time in weeks, Lisa slept without pain medication. She woke Christmas morning telling Margaret she felt rested, truly rested, something she hadn't felt since the diagnosis began stealing her strength. Tom dismissed it as holiday adrenaline, the body's last generous gift before the end. But the next day, she reported the same quiet energy. And the next, Lisa's improvement began as a whisper that no one in the family dared to believe at first. The morning after Christmas, she woke without the bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant companion. She asked Margaret for real coffee, not the weak decaf she had been limited to, and managed to drink half a cup with hands that trembled far less than the day before. Margaret watched from the doorway, afraid to hope, afraid even to breathe too loudly. Tom, dropping by on his day off in civilian clothes, chalked it up to holiday adrenaline, the body's final generous gift before surrender. But when Lisa stood to hug him and took 3 steady steps without the walker, he felt the first crack in his rational armor. The next day, she walked to the bathroom alone. By New Year's Eve, she crossed the living room unaided, laughing softly at her own tentative balance, like someone relearning a forgotten dance. The family gathered around her in stunned silence, exchanging glances that asked the same unspoken question: "Is this real?" The doctors were cautious, then bewildered. "Temporary plateau," Dr. Anderson suggested at the first follow-up. "Stress-induced remission is rare but documented." They ordered fresh tests, MRIs, EMG, blood panels for inflammation markers. Results trickled in over January, each one more astonishing than the last. Motor neuron activity increasing where it should only decrease. Muscle atrophy reversing. Neural pathways lighting up on scans like dormant bulbs suddenly blooming. Anderson spread the new images across his light board, tracing lines with a finger that trembled slightly. "Tom, Margaret, this doesn't happen. ALS is progressive, inexorable. I've treated hundreds of patients. I've never seen spontaneous regeneration like this. Not once in 20 years. Tom sat in the corner of the exam room, arms crossed tight, clinging to skepticism like a life raft. Coincidence. Placebo effect from the statue. Misdiagnosis from the beginning. Anything but the word that kept whispering at the edge of his thoughts. But Lisa kept the Virgin Mary on her nightstand, fingers tracing the blue mantle each morning and night. She began praying again, simple childhood prayers at first, then longer conversations in the quiet hours. Margaret joined her, rosary beads clicking softly, tears falling onto wood worn smooth by decades. Even James, the family's practical engineer, found himself whispering thanks when he thought no one heard. Tom watched from the sidelines, torn between the evidence unfolding before him and the fortress of logic he had built brick by brick. Late nights, he researched Marian apparitions throughout history, documented healings at Lourdes and Fatima, rare cases of unexplained ALS remission filed away as medical anomalies. The rational part cataloged coincidences, statistical outliers, confirmation bias. But the other part, growing, insistent, remembered the glow in the trash can on Christmas Eve, the warmth of cold porcelain in his hands, the way the statue had seemed to call him from the darkness. One crisp February afternoon, he returned to the Morrison Street on routine patrol. The house looked transformed, curtains open, porch swept, a new welcome mat at the door. He slowed the cruiser, eyes drawn to the curb where the trash cans had stood that night. Nothing there now but clean concrete. He parked, stepped out, stood in the exact spot. The air was mild, spring teasing the edges of winter. He closed his eyes, half expecting the blue glow, half dreading it. Instead came the scent, soft at first, then unmistakable roses in full summer bloom, rich and living, wrapping around him like memory and promise. No gardens blooming nearby, no florist trucks, just roses on a February afternoon in Phoenix. Tom's breath caught. He opened his eyes, scanned the empty street. The fragrance lingered another heartbeat, then faded as gently as it had come. That evening, he drove straight to Margaret's house. Lisa was in the kitchen making tea, actually making tea, hands steady, humming an old hymn under her breath. She turned and grinned when he walked in. "Caught me. Doctor says I'm allowed now." Tom stared. The woman who weeks earlier could barely hold a spoon now moved with careful grace. He swallowed hard. "Lisa, today on that street, I smelled roses, right where I found the statue." She set the kettle down, eyes shining with understanding. "I know. I smelled them too. That first morning I woke up feeling better. The whole room was full of it. Mom did too." Margaret appeared in the doorway, rosary in hand. "We thought we were imagining it at first, but it came back several times, always when the pain eased, when strength returned." Tom looked at the statue now on the mantel, center place of honor, a candle flickering softly before it. The blue mantle caught the lamplight and seemed, for an instant, to glow again as he sat heavily on the couch. For the first time in his adult life, the fortress cracked wide open. The retrial was scheduled for the following Monday, but the courtroom already felt transformed when Robert Thompson walked in, head held higher, shoulders no longer bowed by the weight of false accusation. The gallery was packed once more, but the tension had shifted from dread to breathless expectation. Word of the planted evidence, the assistant's tearful confession, and the identification of the true thief had spread through the small town like wildfire through dry grass. Prosecutor David Chin stood first, face flushed with the humiliation of being deceived by his own staff. "Your Honor, in light of newly discovered evidence and the confession of prosecutorial misconduct, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Robert Thompson with prejudice." The words landed in absolute silence. Judge Michael Harrison's gavel fell once, softly, almost reverently. "Motion granted. Mr. Thompson, all charges against you are dismissed. You are free to go. This court extends its sincere apology for the suffering you and your family have endured." A collective exhale swept the room. Then came the tears, the applause, the sound of justice finally speaking truth. Robert stood slowly, legs unsteady from months of confinement, and turned toward the front row. Emma was already running, light blue dress fluttering like a banner of victory. Father and daughter met in the aisle in an embrace that seemed to mend every broken night. Robert lifted her high, burying his face in her curls, whispering over and over, "I'm home, baby girl. Daddy's home." Harrison watched from the bench, hands resting on the arms of his wheelchair. The warmth in his legs had not returned since Emma's prayer, but the memory of those fleeting seconds, toes pressing, muscles answering, burned brighter than any verdict. He cleared his throat, voice rough with something new. "Court is adjourned." Then, quieter, almost to himself, "And may God have mercy on us all." 3 months passed in a blur of small miracles and quiet revelations that Harrison's neurological scans, repeated at his urgent insistence, showed what no textbook could account for. faint but undeniable signs of nerve regeneration across the old injury site. New synaptic bridges forming where scar tissue had ruled absolute. Dr. Foster spread the images across the light board, tracing the changes with a finger that trembled slightly. Michael, this is unprecedented. The lesion is still there, but activity is returning. Very subtle, but real. I have no medical explanation. Harrison only nodded, eyes fixed on the glowing lines that should not exist. He knew the explanation. It had 7 years old, dark braids, and a faith strong enough to bargain with heaven. The sensations grew month by month. First faint tingles in his calves, then pressure when he shifted in the chair, then deliberate twitches he could command. Physical therapy, abandoned years ago in bitterness, resumed with a therapist who could barely hide her astonishment. "Whatever you're doing," she told him, "keep doing it." 6 months to the day after Emma's courtroom prayer, Michael Harrison woke before dawn with a feeling he had almost forgotten. Not phantom itch or random spasm, but true control. He pushed to the edge of the bed, gripped the mattress, and willed his legs to move. They answered, weak, trembling from disuse, but alive. He stood, knees buckling at first, then holding. The first step was clumsy, the second steadier. By the third, he was weeping openly. Walking the hallway of his quiet house under dawn light filtering through windows he had not truly seen in 15 years. 2 hours later, he arrived unannounced at the Thompson home, leaning lightly on a simple cane. Robert opened the door and froze, the iron judge standing on his own feet. "Emma," Robert called, voice breaking. "Come quick." The girl appeared in the hallway, eyes widening into joyful moons. She ran and crashed into Harrison's legs, arms wrapping around him. "Mr. Michael, you're walking." He knelt carefully, cane clattering to the porch, and let her hug him fully. Tears fell into her hair. "You were right, little one," he whispered. She kept her promise. Emma pulled back, beaming. "I told you the Virgin Mary always listens." Harrison rose with Robert's help, meeting the father's stunned gaze. "I came to thank you both," he said, voice thick. "And to ask forgiveness for ever doubting a child's prayer could change everything." Robert gripped his hand firmly, eyes wet. "You gave me my life back. We're even." From that day forward, Courtroom 4B became known for something new. Sentences balanced with mercy, questions that sought redemption as much as punishment. The Iron Judge was gone. In his place stood a man who walked with a slight limp but carried compassion like a banner. And every year on the anniversary of the trial, a quiet man with a cane and a little girl in a light blue dress place flowers beneath the statue of Our Lady of Grace in the courthouse garden. A statue donated anonymously, its plaque reading simply, "She believed for us until we could believe again." The transformation of Judge Michael Harrison became quiet legend in the Texas legal community. Where once lawyers dreaded his courtroom, now they spoke of a man who paused before sentencing to ask about families, about struggles, about the possibility of second chances. Maximum penalties became rare. Probation with genuine rehabilitation programs became common. Defendants left his court not crushed but challenged to become better because someone still believed they could. The clerks whispered that a small wooden rosary now rested in his robe pocket beside the gavel that he never preached. He never explained the cane that grew dustier each year or the faint smile that sometimes touched his lips when a child visited the courtroom. But those who knew the story saw it in every merciful ruling. The memory of a 7-year-old girl who dared to bargain with heaven when no adult would. Emma grew taller, her faith as steady as ever. She became the kind of teenager who volunteered at nursing homes, who listened to lonely elders the way she once listened to her father's silence. Robert returned to gardening with renewed joy, teaching neighborhood children how to plant roses that bloomed even in poor soil. Their home once again held a statue of the Virgin Mary in the window, candle flickering each evening. Michael visited often, Sunday dinners, Emma's school plays, quiet coffees on the porch. The three of them formed an unlikely family bound not by blood, but by a courtroom prayer that moved mountains. One spring evening, 10 years after the trial, Michael arrived with a small wooden box. Inside lay a new rosary, blue beads, simple silver crucifix. "For you, Emma," he said. "When you were 7, you gave me back my legs. Now I want to give you something to carry forward." Emma took it reverently, eyes shining. "Thank you, Mr. Michael. But you gave me something too. You showed me that even grown-ups can learn to believe again." Robert watched from the doorway, throat tight. 3 lives forever changed by 6 words spoken in faith when the world laughed. Because that is the quiet power of the Virgin Mary. She does not always appear in visions or voices. Sometimes she works through a child's unwavering prayer, through a judge's forgotten heart, through a courtroom where mercy finally learns to walk again. If this story has touched your own heart, remember, no situation is too hardened, no injustice too deep for her gentle intercession. Do 3 small things today in her honor. 1. Write in the comments, "Virgin Mary, intercede for us." 2. Share this video with someone facing impossible odds. 3. Pray 1 Hail Mary for every person who has lost faith in justice or healing. May the Virgin Mary, tender mother of mercy and hope, continue to bless and protect you and your family, turning your courtroom moments into miracles of grace. Amen.